Good evening, everyone. This is the regular meeting of the Wayne-Westland Community School Board of Education. It's now brought to order on Monday, March 12, 2018 at 7 o'clock. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to welcome each and every one of you. Your attendance here shows your interest in public education and is greatly appreciated. At this time, we'd like to call up, we have two students from Adams Upper Elementary School to lead us in the pledge. Would Jaden and Justice Favor please come forward?
Guys,
Come
we're
down
here in the
here.
well.
And then you're going to stand right there, and then they're going to give you a mic, and you're going to face the flag this way for us, right over here. Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, for one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you stay right there, Mr. Buckaloo has something for you from the...
We have a bio?
Yes. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Stand right there for me, and Ms. Hines is going to read your bio to everyone, okay?
We have Justice Favor from Adams Upper Elementary School. My name is Justice Favor, and my family is awesome. My mom's name is Jakina Elliott, and my dad's name is Rayfield Favor. I have a twin brother, and his name is Jaden. I also have an older brother, and his name is Jalen. I am 11 years old. I love basketball. My favorite pet is a dog. I like to play games, and I love math. When I grow up, I want to be a basketball player. And we have Jaden Favor. My name is Jaden Favor, and my family is awesome.
Awesome family.
Awesome family, right. And my father's name is Rayford Favor, and my mom's name is Shaquille Elliott, and my brother's name is Justice and Jalen. I get good grades. I love math and writing. When I grow up, I want to be an engineer.
Great job. Good. So if you stand right there, Mr. Buckaloo's going to come down, and he has something to present to you for coming out and taking time out your day to come and say the pledge for us, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, guys. You know, we can't do this without you fellas each week, each month helping us. So if I got this right, you're Jaden? You guys moved on me. That is not fair. That is not cool at all. But you're from Adams Upper Elementary, and we do so appreciate you coming out. You don't know how important it is for us to see young men like you come here and get us started on the evening's events, and I just couldn't be more happy to have you here today. I truly mean that. Did you bring somebody with you? Yes. A mom? Sister? Any teachers or administrators? Who's the old guy in the back?
Oh, ouch.
That wasn't good.
How you doing, sir? Well, listen, thank you very much. Again, it's our honor to have you here, and I appreciate so much you being here.
Thank you,
Justice?
guys. Ms. Curry. Ms. Curry, are you going to take the picture in here, or are you going to take the picture in here, or where are you going to take it at? Out there or in here? They're going to take a quick picture, make you a star real quick.
That's all it takes.
All right. Thank you for coming. You're more than welcome to stay if you like, but if you have lots of homework or your parents want to skedaddle, it's okay. We understand. Thank you for coming this evening. Well, moving on to item number 300.18, roll call of attendance. Ms. Hines, please.
Mr. Cox,
Present.
Mr. Buckaloo,
Present.
Dr. Weaver,
Here.
Ms. Hines here, Ms. Madison,
Absent.
Ms. Medell,
I'm here.
Ms. Walker.
Present.
Let the record show 6 and 0.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 301.18, recognitions and presentations. Dr. Holt?
Thank you, Madam President. So at this time, I would like to invite Mr. Leander Robbie up to do our climate and culture report. And as he's coming up to the mic, I do want to acknowledge that this is the first board meeting for our new superintendent, assistant superintendent of climate, culture, and social emotional learning, who would typically do this introduction, but it's his first meeting. Welcome, Dr. Andre Townsend. Thank you for coming and joining us. Part of the work in preparation for his arrival was for us to really look and have a deep dive into our climate and culture and get some really honest feedback from all of our stakeholders at multiple levels of the organization around what it is that we're doing or need to do with respect to climate and culture. And so this is, I want to say, the third time we've done this presentation. We did it once for Leadership Council. We also did this in an open forum for our teachers and staff members, and then we also did some overview of it at one of the safety meetings, one of the 4 safety meetings that we have had. So, Mr. Robbie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. It's good to be with you. My name is Leander Robbie, and I'm with Healings Associates. We've been doing work like this for 26 years with K-12 school districts across the state of Michigan. So, just to briefly, I'll share how we went about doing the survey and then talking about what we found in the survey as far as our process. Our focus is to help coach from point A to point B, and so for us, we brought that same philosophy to coaching a process and trying to provide a framework and a good process so that the culture and climate was apparent because of the process and that the voices were heard in that process. And so what we did is we went with different stakeholder groups. These stakeholder groups are the ones that are represented in this survey. It was teachers, site administrators, support staff, union leadership, the public, as far as parents, citizens, et cetera, and then the central office administrative staff. So those were the stakeholder groups represented in this survey. We did this through group meetings. We also did individual one-on-one interviews. We also did not interview any of the school board members or the superintendent. We just wanted to make note of that. And then there were 2 public forums which were open to the public at large. And so the stated purpose of each of these interview sessions that we had, or group meetings, was to say we are the voice between you and the leadership of the district. So we are simply to be that voice, that pipeline for you in that process. We used Carl Jung's theory to provide a framework and to use 4 different voices and to let those speak as we were in this process. And the one is the voice of the innocent, and that's simply to say that innocent voice recognizes very quickly what's good and right about the moment, about the situation, and the strengths of what's happening. And so we wanted to hear that voice and to talk about what were the very positive things that should be leveraged within the district. We also have the destroyer voice, which sounds pretty evil, but actually it's a good thing. And it's talking about, hey, here are things that have been good, but it's time to let those things go because they've ceased being effective, and we wanted to listen to that voice as well. We have then the seeker voice, which is to say, what are the new ideas and solutions that we should be listening to that would really benefit the district and that are not being implemented at this present time? What do we need to bring to the table in that sense? And to listen to that voice. And then there's the orphan voice. And the orphan voice is that voice they're up on the city wall looking out over the horizon, and they're looking for danger. And they're cautious, and it's an important voice to help guard us. And so we wanted to listen to that voice and to make sure if there's any struggles or obstacles that we need to be aware of and concerned for, that was heard as well. And so by listening to all 4 of these, it was to provide a balanced view to the culture and climate for the district. We had one thing that we noticed that happened, this can happen at times, and when stakeholders lack a complete narrative or a healthy narrative at times, they very often will fill that vacuum and fill the gaps with the orphan voice. It's just human nature. So it's not something that was just something that was unique to this district. We've seen that happen over and over again, and there were a couple stakeholder groups where that did happen, and it became sort of a predominant voice that they could have spent the entire time there. And so our work was to spend time saying we've made sure to listen to this voice, let's listen to the other voices as well. But that was something that did happen here. we saw 3 different things that came out, 3 different findings that just were dominant themes that came to the surface and rose really to the top. And one was student behavior is a significant issue that was of concern, staff attrition, and then the change process that was in process at that time. And when you take all 3 of those coming together in a sense, a perfect storm, if you will, it can cause there to be an overwhelmed or frustrated stakeholder group or groups, and that was the case here. So it was a convergence of all 3 of those. And so with that, I wanted to dive deeper into each of those. And the student behavior piece was significant in the sense it was perceived by multiple stakeholder groups as a grave concern. It was not just a concern, it was just the language was loud and clear. This is a grave concern. Now that was true of every single stakeholder group except one. One was an outlier. And in the report, or the synopsis that you have, I just wanted to make note of that. It says here that that was each stakeholder group except the administration feels a lack of support for student behavior in the buildings. When it says except the administration group, it's talking about the central office administrators. That stakeholder group did not talk about student behavior, but every other stakeholder group did, and it was a dominant theme. So I just wanted you to know that there was that outlier of one stakeholder group. But for all the others, the need for addressing a related issue, which was socio-emotional needs, was addressed. But every stakeholder group said the issue of student behavior is dramatically hindering learning. It's also driving families out of the districts. And staff and parents alike said this issue is so critical it could determine whether or not they would leave the district in the future. So this obviously rose to the surface. And then many ideas for tackling that were presented through the seeker voice. So people had a lot of ideas, and that was great, but this was definitely a need. Then we have staff attrition. And so that came up, and that was presented and attributed to several causes. One was low wages and benefits. Number 2 was, again, the discouragement in the buildings because of what they see due to a lack of support for the student behavior issue. It was interesting to note that also they said that challenges from the current change process added to that in the sense of confusion or overwhelmed kind of feelings that they would have already that just compounded those. But also it was interesting to note that professional development was pointed to in the district as a strength actually that would prevent attrition. And so that was recognized as a strength in the innocent voice. But the overall consensus was that too much experience is leaving the district, and that's happening when there's an ability to fill even open positions, and then even when those are filled, it's typically with a college graduate as opposed to someone with experience. And so that exodus was seen as a great concern going forward. And then the current change process, and so what was happening there were 2 issues that were raised in that as far as concerns. And the first was just the perceived lack of communication that was happening within the district as change is happening. And so with that, the reflection was that there was a need for 2-way communication and increased 2-way communication through the change process. Because stakeholders would have questions and they did not feel there was a proactive design for where they could go for answers and things were changing, they would express their frustration in terms of, well, there needs to be transparency and greater transparency. So that increased 2-way communication would help remove or at least diminish the perceived lacks of transparency. The second concern was just simply the support for we do need to change. And over again, that was a mantra. We need to change. There's change is necessary, but the concern was the pace of the change. And so that change was being voiced as needed, but at the same time, it's almost like a paradox, but it's happening too fast. So that's just a real issue that was being addressed there as well and raised by many stakeholder groups. And so I just want to make sure that I have not missed anything there. Those two pieces together were the 2 halves of the concern with the current change process, and so those both can be remedied. And so the results from this survey and the issues raised by this survey deserve further study and discussion by district leadership, obviously, and development of a collaborative action plan would be key to improving and enhancing the culture going forward. So are there any questions that you have for me. Yes.
I just have a comment. I'd like to definitely thank you for bringing that out because that has been a problem. Like a lot of teachers say, I don't feel supported. There's behavior problems. And like you said, you want your children to feel safe in the schools. And then with the childhood trauma without a 4, so I like the way the district is taking this on. We have social workers, and I really appreciate you bringing this to us so we can figure out a way to help everybody. Because I guess, you know, teachers in the classroom, you want to have a classroom where you can teach and learn and people feel safe. So thank you so much for bringing this to our attention.
Anyone else? Dr. Weaver?
Yes. My question is, there was a concern about communication.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in a situation where we have a new superintendent and is, quite frankly, doing a great job in leading this district through change. But my question comes from the teachers, the workers, support staff. How are they suggesting that their questions can get answered? I mean, is there some kind of system going to be set up where they could email, or what's happening there?
Well, that's a great question. And our role was not to provide a bunch of solutions for these or strategies for these. It was simply to be the voice. And so we were there to be that conduit to the leadership, and then the leadership to do what they deemed necessary with these findings. One thing that was voiced in that was talking about more than one channel of communication. So when you use the word email, for example, again, that's the seeker voice coming out, right? And so from the stakeholders, they were saying more than just simply email is going to be needful.
So what you're saying is you brought the cupcakes, but we're not going to get one, right? So thank you.
I can speak to it a little bit. What we have done as a result, not only of the survey, but I owned the fact that we could not communicate during the initial parts of the change process. Based on the dynamics of what was happening within the district, there were some changes that needed to happen, and we did not have systems of communication to have effective two-way communication. And so I've owned that and explained that on multiple fronts. And now we have a bit of a better step forward. It is not a complete fix, but we have now opened up Facebook pages and social media for us to communicate. So I communicate with quite a few students, staff, parents, amazingly via Facebook. And so it was reluctant as I was to get on it. And now they have me looking at Twitter, or is it Twitter or Instagram? One of the two. I'll learn. But really it's to open up that two-way form of communication for us to come back and forth, and for stakeholders to have a mechanism to ask questions directly of me. And so that's one way. The other piece that we have started is a weekly memorandum that comes out called This Week in Wayne-Westland, which we have really started to push out through Leadership Council. It started out just going to Leadership Council, which embodies all of our department heads, our principals, and our union leadership. And so what I asked is that everyone take a role in getting that out to staff and letting us know whether or not this is working for us to really do that two-way communication. So we do have folks that send in questions. The mantra being, if one person has the question in the district, there may be more that have that same question. So please send your questions in to Jenny Johnson in Communications, and then we can take those and answer them through the This Week in Wayne-Westland. And it's separated by each of the 5 departments that we have to really outline what it is that we're doing and be very transparent, not only through the change process, but also with what's happening within the district. So that we received a lot of positive feedback from, just saying that we have a lot more information coming out now. Previously we had the Scoop, which was going out quarterly, and it just wasn't enough, especially during these times of transition. We can't communicate quarterly during times of transition, but that's what we had. And so we have taken steps to adjust that, and any suggestions and thoughts that we are open to, because we want to improve those systems of communication. As communication came up over and over and over again, no matter which stakeholder group we were talking to, it came up as a challenge that has been ongoing, both from central office to the school sites, within the school sites, and from the school sites to central office and the community.
Thank you. Anyone else, Dr.
Yes,
Mr.
I'm looking at your current change process, part 1. In particular, I'm looking at the cartoon. it seems important that everybody knows the nature of the change that we're about to undertake. Otherwise, the consequences can be not what we expected, as in grabbing the sandwiches instead of the parachute. So I like that, and I'd like to comment that we're in a position to head in a different direction. We may be able to make some of those decisions this evening. In some ways, change is going to begin with the members of this Board of Education. In other ways, it's not our responsibility to do that, but rather it's an administrative responsibility to make those changes when we're talking about things like behavior. It's a complicated thing. If I'm upset with behavior as a parent, I'm probably going to look at teachers, or I'm going to look at administrators. I'm certainly not going to look at my child. On the other hand, if I'm a teacher and I'm looking at it, well, it's definitely the administrators who need to get tough, and those parents are going to have to do a better job of sending us kids who know how to behave. It all depends on where you stand, how you view behavioral problems. And so maybe all of us need to take a better understanding of what the problem is. Certainly, in the general scheme of things, behavior needs to improve. But it has to begin with us understanding where the problem lies. And I think everyone bears some of the responsibility for improving behavior, not the least of which are the kids sitting in the classroom. So hopefully we can get started on that. I know that that's a goal of this administration, and certainly it's something that everyone working in this district and every parent sending their children to school in this district would agree on. But how we achieve that is something that is going to take a little bit of effort. I appreciate you bringing this study to us. There's a lot of meat in it and a lot of truth in it, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Item B, please.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Robbie. I would like to call up Mrs. Jen Curry and Mrs. Kate Brawl to give us a presentation on third grade reading. As many of you are aware, we recently passed a legislation regarding third grade reading, and we thought it timely within the scope of everything that we're going to decide and everything that is currently happening within the state and in the nation to refocus ourselves back on our purpose within academics and get another picture of what's happening right now with literacy. So they're going to summarize quite a few presentations, including our current data, and give you some information about what we're planning moving forward to improve literacy throughout the entire district. This is not just an elementary issue. This is a Wayne-Westland challenge that we need to face together.
Thank you, and thank you for giving us a few minutes to go over what we're doing with literacy, where we're at, and where we are going. So the National Assessment of Education Progress is the largest national test of what America's students know and can do in various subject areas. The assessment stays essentially the same from year to year and provides a clear picture of student academic progress over time. In 2015, 36% of fourth graders were proficient on this assessment. Subgroup information included Black students had an average score that was 28 points lower than white students. Hispanic students had an average score that was 25 points lower than white students. Students who were eligible for free and reduced lunch had an average score that was 24 points lower than students who were not eligible. Our district is seeing similar trends on the third and fourth grade MSTEP assessment. For the last 12 years, while nearly all other states across the country made gains in fourth grade literacy performance, Michigan lagged behind. Michigan is sliding towards the bottom nationally for fourth grade reading and is projected to fall to 48th place by 2030. In 2003, Michigan ranked 28th in fourth grade reading. In 2015, our state ranked 41st. In 2015, African American students living in Michigan had the lowest achievement levels in fourth grade reading. In 2017, approximately 56% of third graders did not pass the reading test on our MSTEP assessment. The impact of these patterns is more Students begin to struggle throughout the school, and many graduate without strong literacy skills. As you can see in this graph, reading achievement for Michigan has stagnated. It hasn't moved. Fourth grade scores now fall below the national average. This slide indicates that Wayne-Westland has had low growth and low proficiency in English language arts and the amount we receive per student. The base per pupil cost to educate a general education student in Michigan is $9,590, which does not include transportation, food service, capital costs, and only includes pension costs of 4.6% of wages. Wayne-Westland only receives $7,631 per student.
I'll click and talk. All right, good evening. So this is an example of a fourth grade reading selection sample from the National Assessment of Educational Progress. This is assessment that's given to a random sampling of students across the nation, and the assessment is designed to measure a student's reading comprehension by asking them to read selected grade appropriate materials and answer questions based on what they have read. So this is just a medium difficulty problem, and there are then multiple questions after this. Multiple choice questions where students need to infer the meaning, and written response where students need to support their thinking with evidence from the text. This is then from the state test, the MSTEP test, and this mirrors the national test. Same thing, they're expected to answer multiple questions, written response, multiple choice. And I know that you received this from us ahead of time, and on the second page it says a lot of the things that are happening right now, setting the stage for change. So a lot of things have happened already in the state, and things that are in place to help support third grade reading and reading literacy in general. So it's laid out in more detail there. One thing that has happened so far is that a group of intervention specialists have been attending the statewide coaching collaborative, and they did that in September, November, and then most recently last week in Lansing, where Mrs. Curry and I joined them, and then we'll continue that work in June. Another piece is the third grade reading law that has been put into effect. Okay? So the third grade reading law, I don't want to read this to you, but there are many different requirements that are involved with this, and RISA and the countywide ISDs have really been supporting this across the entire state, and they come together to help put together the PDs that we do. Also, we have a ELA content team, elementary ELA content team, and they've been working together with the documents from RISA and using the other documents across the state to help figure out what is that going to look like for us in Wayne-Westland. So here you have the next steps for Wayne-Westland, and really we look at this as an opportunity to build our literacy program. One of the things that we have developed is a third grade reading letter and a parent guide that you also received a copy of that. That's going to go to all of our families March 26th when the report card comes out. So that way they have an awareness not only of the third grade reading law, but they also have some resources at their fingertips that they can use with their students starting now. We'll also be looking closely at our ELA scope and sequence and resources that we have in our buildings currently and how we need to continue to support that work. Next year, we intend to have literacy coaches in all of our K-4 schools. We intend to have our staff trained in the essential instructional practices, which I believe you also received copies of that as well. Those are part of the work that was developed at the state level. Instructional coaches, not only in K-4, but in the 5 through 12 buildings. A fall kickoff to support literacy instruction across the state, and begin to look at our K-4 instructional resources for ELA. So a lot of work is needed, and we're ready to roll up our sleeves and dig into that work.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Any questions from anyone? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Moving on to item number 302.18, citizen comments, agenda items only. Okay.
I think we know where he works.
My name's John Albrecht. I live at 38512 Loris in Westland. All my kids graduated from Wayne-Westland schools, and my grandkids are graduated from Wayne-Westland schools. Later, in a few minutes, you're going to make a decision about grade configuration for Wayne-Westland schools. And I'm kind of excited that there's a lot of educators in the room. And I'm going to challenge you to think outside of the box, to think differently than you ever thought before. Understand that a smaller educational setting significantly benefits children, in particular at the younger grades. And so a K-8 setting in our 11 elementary schools would make a lot of sense versus putting 1,100 kids in a 6-8 building middle school. Even though that is what we tend to claim we have some experience with, if we're truly interested in benefiting children, we should be thinking that way. Research also indicates that students in K-8 configurations are far more prepared to enter the 9th grade in a high school setting. Research also indicates they've had a much better opportunity to develop relationships with their teachers in their school and their community. Research also indicates that families become much more attached to the schools when they're a smaller setting and they're more neighborhood-like. And finally, if you're going to try to make a difference in student behavior in this district, the smaller setting is an easier place to establish that kind of culture and to achieve the kind of goals you want to achieve. So I'm going to ask you, before you make that decision, don't rely on what you remember. Don't rely on what people are telling you or what they're afraid of. Education for children should be about children and not about us, adults. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Agenda items only. Okay, seeing none. Moving on to item number 303.18, consent agenda. At this time, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Hines,
Support.
support by Ms. Medell. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Medell?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Buckaloo?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Ms. Hines, yes. Ms. Madison absent. Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Let the record show 6-0.
Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to item number 305.18, decision of grade configuration. So, I think you,
I think you skipped something.
did I skip something?
Right at the very top.
Hold on.
304.18.
Right at the very
Oh, sorry. 1 second. I want to get to the grade configuration.
Can we take a moment to acknowledge the consent calendar?
If you like.
I just want to acknowledge that through the consent calendar, we just approved, and I'm going to acknowledge it because she's here, Maria Mitter as our supervisor of family and community engagement, designed to help us with a lot of the work that we're talking about today. So thank you for being here.
I thought she just came to show her pretty face.
She's back on the payroll.
Okay, I'm sorry, everyone. Let's go back. Item number 304.18, review and approval of employee relations items. Ms. Simmons.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I am requesting approval this evening for Kathleen Broll as our Executive Director of Standards Learning and Innovation. Kate possesses a bachelor's degree in elementary education from Bowling Green State University and a master's in the art of teaching from Mary Grove College. She has served in the district as a teacher, a literacy leader, an intervention specialist, and most recently as the co-principal at Adams Upper Elementary School.
Okay. At this time, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Hines, supported by Mr. Cox. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Hines, yes. Ms. Medell?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Buckaloo?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Let the record show 6-0.
Thank you. Ms. Kroll, do you wanna say anything? Do you wanna introduce who you brought with you today?
Can I do it here, or do you want me to go there?
Go up to the, yeah, we're gonna do it like everyone else does.
Okay. Okay, now I'm official. I was just here a minute ago. This is Brady. Brady is my third grader at Walker. That's Henry. I don't know if he's coming up here or not, but he's my kindergartner at Walker. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm so excited to be serving in this capacity. I've been in the district my whole entire career. I bring my boys here from out of district to be here, which says a lot. And so when I'm serving all of your kids, it's our kids, it's my kids. So I'm just really excited about this, so thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Congratulations.
Welcome back.
Ms. Simmons, item B, please.
Yes. Madam President, I present to you Mr. Brandon Cox for approval as principal of Taft Galloway Elementary School. Mr. Cox possesses a Bachelor's of Science from Eastern Michigan University, a Master's of Science from Concordia University, and he has served as a principal in River Rouge School District and currently serving as the Director of Trauma Services and Transportation.
Okay. At this time, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cox.
Support.
Supported by Dr. Weaver. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bedell?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Buckaloo?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Ms. Hines, yes. Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Let the record show 6-0.
Thank you. Motion carries. Mr. Cox. Congratulations and welcome to the Westland family.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Cox. I'm so excited to be a part of the Wayne-Westland family. I come with a 16-year background. I started out as an elementary teacher. I was moved up to be a middle school coordinator. After that, I was an assistant principal, and then I was a principal of a K through 8 and a 6 through 8 for 9 years. And recently, I was moved into a director of trauma services role. I'm so excited to be a part of Wayne-Westland, and I can't wait to be a part of Taft. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome again.
I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the Taft staff. If you are from the Taft Elementary team, will you please stand? Thank you. Thank you for being here to support. Thank you.
And just so you know, there is no relationship between the two here.
I would have moved approval even if you had a different last name.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 305.18. Now we're at the good stuff.
I'm sure.
Decision on grade configuration. Okay. So are we going to do a recap, or how do you want to proceed with this? How are we?
Yes, Madam President, we'd like to do a recap of the two workstations that we presented to the Board of Education, and then open up for any questions that you may have prior to that going forward. So I think it's actually up on the screen. I'm just trying to get there from here, but to the rescue.
Here comes some help.
Yes. So again, this is actually a culmination of several presentations that have been provided to the Board of Education, both through board updates and through board work sessions. This is really the culmination of Choicework, which the district took on last year, really taking a look at addressing the declining enrollment. The last time the district decreased the square footages or number of buildings was back in 2008, 2009. Since that time, we've gone from roughly 14,000 students. It's projected to be right around 10,000 students here going forward. So real quickly, this is a graphic that shows your current cohorts, if you will, going forward. So again, you have 11 elementary schools that are K-4. You have 2 upper elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 2 high schools, and you also have 6 ancillary support facilities going forward. This equates to roughly 2 million square feet of operational space going forward. One of the configurations that came forward was going back to what the district was previously, prior to 2008, 2009, which is a K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12. This would equate to 2 less elementary schools and 1 less upper and or middle school, depending on the facility itself. So you'd end up with 20 facilities. When you take a look, you're actually decreasing to 1.84 million square feet for an anticipated bond program. So again, taking a look at your 10-year capital plan, that equates to roughly $150.1 million. To put it in perspective, 1998, the last time the voters approved a large bond, was roughly $163 million going forward. What that equates to is the 2.5 mil would be a 25-year bond, which would be also coupled with the 2.65 existing mil for 5.15, which is the average of what the taxpayer has been paying for the last 10 years. There was a question of, again, this is kind of more the graphical ending up with the two less elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and then obviously 2 high schools. There is an option. If you did want to have a K-8 building within this, what would happen is you'd have 1 less elementary school, so 3 elementary schools less. And you'd actually have the fourth school being converted into a K-8 STEAM. From a bond standpoint, instead of a 25-year bond, you'd look at a 30-year bond, but it'd still be about the same millage rate of 5.65. So it doesn't change the bond duration. It does add roughly $5 to $6 million, depending on the building. But again, you're doing 1 less elementary school, and again, the difference is really that middle school configuration going forward.
Okay, can I stop for a
Absolutely.
second? Say that one more time, because I'm not sure
Sure.
I'm understanding. Ooh, mouth doesn't work. Understanding how we would still lose another elementary building.
Because what
Because
happens,
we have the same number of kids.
right, so instead of having 3 middle schools, you'd end up with the 4th middle school. So that 4th middle school would take the place of that 3rd elementary school and really become a magnet program for a STEM or a STEAM type program.
So what we're doing is just swapping out?
Correct. So you're
Okay.
swapping out actually to a larger facility. So elementaries, you average roughly 50,000 square feet at the elementary level. Your middle school is right between 120 to 130,000 square feet. So that 4th middle school, if you will, takes the place of that, I'll call it the 3rd elementary school. But again, keeping the same class sizes and teacher-student ratios, that's in your policies. So again, that's really the main difference between the K-5, a 6, 8, 9, 12 is having the ability to have that K-8 option. I think you had asked what some other districts have done in the state.
Yes.
Southfield Public Schools, Ann Arbor Schools, Farmington, Lansing, they do have a K-8 type program within their current configurations, which are more traditional.
So those that you mentioned, they have the K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12, and then they have the K-8 STEM building.
Correct, in one of their facilities.
Okay.
Part of the reason why the change, we'd lose one of the elementaries is, remember, we have to stay at 85% capacity in order to qualify for a bond through the state. So you can't add another school and stay at 85%.
And then there was something else that you had mentioned, that even though the mills might be the same for the bond, that we wouldn't gain. What was something that you were mentioning?
Sure. So for instance, this is the analysis of just the K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12 with 2 less elementary schools and 1 less upper middle school. The delta between the elementary range and the middle school is roughly $4 to $5 million. So you look at probably about 155 million versus 150 million. But again, just looking at the difference between a 25-year bond or a 30-year bond. It would still be a multiple series bond, so again, addressing some of the concerns from the board of potentially not putting monies into facilities if enrollment was to continue to decline. But this, as Mr. Larson-Schuyler mentioned, keeps you at that 85% utilization, gives you that K-8 option within the traditional K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12, at the same mill rate.
And I have a question too, looking at the K-8 configuration with the different elementary schools, will there be enough space by each building if you were to add on, like on each property, is there enough?
Actually, that's a great question, Trustee Hines. Actually, when we get to that K, we actually have a sample of how to add on to existing elementary schools to create that upper middle school type configuration where other districts have done. So again, this was a K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12. Again, 2 less elementary, 1 less upper middle school. And then again, if the option was to include a K-8, there'd be 3 less elementaries, but you'd still have that 4th middle school, and it's about 155 million versus 150 million going forward.
And how permanent is say a K-8? So if, say, we went to the K-8 configuration and
Didn't draw enough students or
whatever, just anything happens, how easy is it to go back
So
to a different configuration?
Sure. So I think that's why it's important to have a multiple series bond. So again, if you create, let's say, the high schools, we know are going to be more than likely the first projects out of the projects if approved by the voters, because those are 2 long-term assets we know the district's going to take place. You'd probably look at maybe doing 2 middle schools in the first series, maybe 2 in the second series. So again, that way you're not potentially investing, if you did for whatever reason because enrollment didn't capture it, to maybe not do that 4th middle school in that second series. So again, those are some of those safety stopgaps as you're doing strategic planning for bond implementation that would come into play. I know we looked at it as a board and as work sessions. If you're committed to that K-8 at the middle schools, it's extremely difficult to go back to a K-5 or a 6, 8, 9, 12 in those types of facilities.
One thing I kind of worry about too is like the configuration, because it's very important how we decide where everything goes with the areas, the neighborhood, the schools, and the people, you know, because I'm a community person, and the people, how they feel about neighborhood schools. So that's one thing I'm kind of worried about with the different configurations, because if it goes one way, you know, another way it might be, you know, kind of permanent.
So you're actually leading up to my future slides, which actually talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both of these options as the board's looking at that. So, if I may, again, this is more of a graphical showing the two less elementaries, 3 middle schools, and obviously your 2 high schools going forward. In terms of Choiceworks cost savings, so again, working very closely with finance, operations, transportation, this option saves the district annually about $1.8 million. It's also the quickest in terms of being able to get to that configuration because you would literally just keep those 5th graders as they cohort through, and then 2 years later the 6th graders ultimately until you, as they matriculate up to the middle school option going forward. So about $1.8 million of annual savings. Potential shifts, as I mentioned, that K4, 5th, 6th is really is in 2019, so it happens fairly quickly. K5 would remain, 6, 8, and 9, 12, ultimately through 2022. We did this analysis because when you look at the next situation, there's a delay in how fast you can actually design and construct additions, which have to come into play for that ultimate yearly savings going forward. So I think it's safe to say that regardless of if the bond passes or not passes, different configurations, because of your taking footprint or square footage and buildings off, there would be some reconfiguration taking place. Obviously, this would be a lot more minimal in terms of the elementary pieces. The high schools would stay roughly the same. You'd have to look at the middle schools. Trustee Hans.
I got one question about the construction with all these different buildings for the K through 8. Like, will certain buildings get construction at certain times, or will they all be at the same time, or, you know, I'm kind of worried about.
Sure, it'll definitely be phased, and we'll talk about that implementation because it does take time to draw additions and go through the state approval process and things of that nature. Again, the K5, 6, 8, 9, 12, from an implementation standpoint, because you are renovating existing facilities, that design and construction process goes quicker than potentially adding on additions to the existing facilities.
So I just want to make sure I heard this right and then I read this right.
Yep.
When we did the choice work and we did the surveys, the K5, 6, 8, 9, 12 was the number 1 choice, correct?
That's correct.
And the K8 was the second choice, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We'll go
Thank
to
you.
the next one.
Well, I got to somewhat correct that, because
Okay.
when we went through the Choiceworks, through all the forums, we did not have the K5, 6, 8, 9, 12 as an option. So that option came from people saying at the end, what is it that you would like to have seen? So that's why we put it into the consideration.
But when they
the final.
asked that question and we went back to find out, that was the main option that people wanted?
That is through Leadership Council.
Okay.
Leadership Council.
So when we did
look
choice
at
work with the community and our staff, where were we at with the configurations?
Well, we did not have K5, 6, 8,
Okay.
9, 12
So we
in
never
that
did
consideration.
Okay.
So that was not involved.
So we don't
in
know
the
how
forums.
anyone feels about that configuration?
It was popular at the end, when people would, when we asked for other considerations, people in every forum brought that up as an option. Because that is a common configuration.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Ms. Madell?
Jim, are we under some kind of time crunch here for getting paperwork to the state?
We
for
are.
the bond issue, so this is why? Because common sense would tell me to put the other 2 options back out to the public for their input. After all, they're going to be on the receiving end of this. And that might be a wise course to take, especially if staff and residents and not just parents get a chance to have their input also, because that's who we represent up here.
Not sure we'd be able to make the timelines.
We have a slide at the very end that kind of talks about that time, so really we have to be between now and April, I think 12th board meeting timeframe. So not a lot of time, but
It might be tight, but I think it could be an option.
So as long as we had a decision by the April 12th meeting, you could beat the timeline, is that what you're saying?
what we'd have to run is we'd run 2 bond applications, and then once you say A or B, then that's the one we would submit to the state in mid-April. for that Department of Treasury meeting. So
I guess we should get to the end of the slide and then
Sure.
see what you're, so we
So,
can see.
so what Paul is saying is we're going to create 2 books.
Mhm.
And then, you know, so then we would come to the April meeting, so we would have both applications in hand
Okay.
to go forward, because there won't really be time to wait at that point.
So just so that everyone understands, we have had study sessions last 3 weeks in a row. And this is a big decision, and it's not something that we want to take lightly. And once the decision is made, it's made. And so if there's still some doubt or some concerns amongst the board members, I just want to make sure that we all are on the same page on our thinking, that we are doing what's right for the children in the community, that we're doing what's right for the district. And I just don't want to just run into something because we have to have a time frame, and then later on we're bouncing our heads against the wall because we thought we made the wrong decision. And so that's where we're coming from. So please try not to get frustrated with us, but this is our job to make sure that we have.
We work with about 60 other districts around the state who are similar situations of A versus B, and again, it is a community, and you know, ultimately the students and the teachers are the ones that have to teach in either configuration going forward. So this is really more of the capital planning piece, than ultimately how that academic takes place is more that initial planning.
So you can go ahead with their.
Okay, sure. So again, this is just some of the advantages. Again, having that 6-8 stay at the middle schools, they have greater access for extracurricular activities. What I mean by that is maybe athletics, maybe a choir room, band room, things that may not necessarily be at the elementary levels. A little more vertical alignment with grades 6-8. And again, those facilities are currently designed to house the different cohorts going forward. Again, the siblings, you're a little bit longer with K5 versus K4. There's only 2 transitions now versus your current 3. Again, some of the disadvantages we talked about is regardless as redistricting would have to take place. And again, some of the things that I think came out of Choiceworks, some parents like that K8 transition, so it's only 1 transition between upper elementary, middle school, and ultimately into the high school. The second is K8, 9, 12, and again, this would be additions at 11 elementary schools, so 4 less upper and middle schools. And again, one of these 11 could be designated as a STEAM program. So again, that K8 would already be in place within one of the 11 schools. You take your 2 million square feet currently, it pushes you down to 1.62, so almost 400,000 square feet less of operational space going forward. It's $164.7 million of bonds, so slightly from a millage rate, it's 5.65 mils, so higher than the 5.5 going forward. But again, it's a decrease of roughly 400,000 square feet, and it's 164.8 million going forward. You end up with 11 K8, 2 high schools, 3 instructional, and then 3 non-instructional, which is your buildings, grounds, transportation, and the Dyer Center. This is what it looks like graphically. So again, keeping that neighborhood concept. We hear sometimes about the walkability, neighborhood schools, having kids stay for basically 9 grades, K through 8, and then also ultimately pulling up into the high school levels themselves. From a Choiceworks configuration, this is about a $2.7 million a year annual savings. So again, significantly more than the K5, 6, 8, 9, 12s, predominantly due to having those 4 very large middle schools that's composed of smaller neighborhood schools going forward. From an implementation standpoint, I think as Trustee Hines mentioned, it does take roughly 6 to 8 months to design additions to the buildings. Oftentimes people ask, well, how much construction can take place in an average summer? One of the things we look at is potentially swing spaces. So again, if a middle school was to stay in line, you could transition students in or out. But about $30 million a summer is about as fast as you could potentially move as a district. We'd be looking at multiple architectural teams, multiple construction teams, coming up with their standards. But the ultimate implementation, it really isn't until 2022. So that annual yearly savings is somewhat delayed because you have to keep those middle schools open until the additions are done at the 11 elementary schools going forward. In terms of the Choiceworks, we'd be looking at additions of roughly 6 to 8 classrooms, also adding a gymnasium and or a cafeteria depending on the building configuration itself. We'd obviously want to have secured vestibules in consideration. So kind of how do you have a school within a school to keep the kids separated going forward? Again, in terms of the estimated cost, we do have the demolition costs for the 4 middle schools and upper elementary schools included. Again, taking a look at moving to that 6th, 7th, 8th as those buildings are getting done. So it's a 2 to 3 year process once you do the 11 schools. And again, as I mentioned, the general fund dollars for that 2 to 3 year process of having multiple facilities opened. This is a client that we had that had an existing K-4 building. They actually put a 8 classroom addition on to really make a K-8, if you will. So they actually had one central entrance. To the right was the elementary, to the left was the upper elementary, high school, or middle school. They had 2 different playgrounds, but they shared the cafeteria, they shared the gymnasium. So one of the things we did was took one of your schools and kind of did a similar. So again, this is Hamilton Elementary School. You can see kind of in the turquoise blue, kind of a 6 to 8 classroom addition plus a gymnasium. So again, every site's going to be a little bit different, but we've kind of analyzed the 11, and these additions could take place with minimal configurations. So again, kind of the highlighted, what you have in the yellows and the greens, your current, and again, having a separate hallway for those classroom additions, gym additions going forward. Some of the advantages, again, there is some studies that show, and I think as others have mentioned, some of that research that supports that K-8 model going forward. Again, it is one cohort. So again, keeping those kids longer and then transitioning into high school. We talk about the academics, again, having that mentoring possibility for upper elementary school and middle school kids going forward. But then the disadvantages, again, it does take time. And so elementary schools, that planning process and the building process are some of those challenges going forward. Lastly, as I mentioned, I think if you're looking at a K-8 STEAM type facility, again, we kind of talked about option 1, and then if you ended up with the secondary K-8s, just one of those facilities would be dedicated to that. As I mentioned, if the bond passes or does not pass, because they're declining enrollment, again, you've lost roughly 3,000 or 4,000 students in a 10-year time period, you still have to go through that facility closure and reconfiguration. Another thing that's not is obviously how to decide which facility. So again, that's a secondary step, but right now we've kind of given you the general ideas of total capital dollars based on the 85% goal and maintaining the existing teacher ratios. That's the different facilities for programs. District's done a very good job of taking facilities and renting them out or selling them going forward for additional revenue. So this is the timeline choice. Again, in February we had our presentations at both the February 12th and February 25th or 28th meetings. We did have a work session on the 12th and again, or 7th, and again we're on the 12th. April 9th is really kind of that time frame where we need the board to say option A or B.
Okay.
Right now we do have both bonds set up. Again, from our standpoint, it's going to be a little more work on our end, but we've worked with the Department of Treasury and multiple districts. We've kind of set the template up knowing that you're going through some of that conversation. But really that first week or that first board meeting in April allows us to go meet with Treasury. So we'd set up that meeting in May timeframe and then come back and have them say, here's the approval letter. So,
would you expand on the 85% goal?
Sure, that's a great example. So let's say a classroom has, or a building has 20 classrooms. What you want to have is enough enrollment within that building to hit 85%. So if your goal is to have 25 students per classroom or per teacher in a teaching station, it's different from kindergarten, obviously, up through middle school or high school. But if you had 20 classrooms at 25, you're looking at roughly 500, 525, somewhere in there from that level. So take that number and then basically put an 85% factor on it, if you will. What that equates to is roughly 1.5 classrooms for swing space. So as a principal, I'm sure you can appreciate they don't come in nice little 25 student packages.
But why is that so important?
It's so important because when the Department of Treasury, because again the district's going to be using the state's bonding or a bond rating, if you will. What they don't want you to do is put capital dollars that have a 25 or 30-year investment that potentially could be shut down in 10, 15, or even 20 years. So that 85% is very important because when you start dropping below that, they start raising questions of what are you going to do if this doesn't increase? So that's why you have a multiple series bond.
So if we can't get the occupancy of our buildings up to 85%, and some of them are right around 60% right now, if we can't get up to 85%, we don't even need to submit a bond proposal.
Actually, they won't even accept it. So the first page they turn to is the utilization sheet in section 5. And if you don't show an average of 85%, they say, please go address your facility needs and come back when you're ready. So I think having the board realize this several years ago and start that whole Choiceworks option, work with the administration, how's the academic piece coming out is key. And so that is the goal of having that 85%. It's okay if you're at 83%, 87%, but as elementary level, it should be at 85. Same thing with upper and middle school and ultimately high schools.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mills, what I want to do now is go through each board member.
Sure.
And see what their thoughts are and where we are this evening. So I'm going to start with Dr. Weaver.
Madam President, if it would be okay with you, I'd like to offer a substitute motion at this time,
Okay.
which is my right to do.
Yes, it is.
I'd like to offer the substitute motion that the Board of Education table this motion for tonight until our April meeting and allow our staff to work on both proposals to bring it back to us, the K-8 proposal and the K-5 in our April meeting.
Okay. At this time, we have a motion on the floor. Do I have any support?
Support.
Okay. So it's been motioned by Dr. Weaver, supported by Mrs. Madell. Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Buckaloo?
So ultimately, I'm going to get around to saying I like the K-8, 9, 12. We're finishing off a 20-year bond at this point. And it's good for a couple of reasons. Number one, we need to do something to address our declining enrollment. It's a good time for us to take a look at our building configuration, to close some buildings, get close to that 85%. I heard a proposal today that would require us to take our 25-year bond and extend it out to 30 years. 20 years is about as much as we've been able to go. Right now, if we had to go another 5 years without coming to the community and saying, look, we need some money to upgrade our buildings, I don't know how we'd get through those next 5 years. And with a 30-year proposal, down the road, we're asking our...
Mr. Buckaloo, we have to stick to the motion that's on the floor right now, so...
And that's what I'm speaking
Okay,
to.
I just want to make sure that we stay
I'm
within the
speaking to the whole
motion.
thing.
Okay.
And so if we go to that 30-year bond, we're going to find ourselves dollars short. At least our successors are. When I look at the research that was made available to us over the weekend, I saw absolutely no research supporting a middle school or a junior high. It was something that was done somewhere around the turn of the century. It seemed to be convenient as school populations increased and you needed more room. But in terms of research showing that it was academically feasible, I didn't see any of that. Whereas when I looked at the K-8, in fairness, there's no guarantee that all of the research is going to say that we're going to have positive results. We may very well get some short-term academic advantages, but maybe they won't be long-term. Even so, there is no promise of any of that coming from middle school, junior high program. Behavior is a problem in our schools. There's no question about that. We just heard a study to that point. One of the problems with behavior has to do with the transition from elementary to middle school, from middle school to high school. We can eliminate one of those transitions if we stick with a K-5 program. There's a greater opportunity for parent support. The kind of support you get at the elementary schools, we could extend through the 8th grade, whereas in the middle school, it's my understanding that that falls off. So we would have greater support there. I just see the chance for us to do something in terms of academics, in terms of behavior, in terms of the service that we provide our students if we go to a K-8, 9, 12 facility. There are some good proposals here, and they deserve a fair hearing. And so while at this moment I'm at one point, I would be willing to see additional information and postpone until next month a decision on which way we're going to go.
Thank you, Mr. Beckler. So my understanding, with the motion still being on the floor, so when we come back, you will have 2 bonds that will be ready to, and we just decide, they'll both be ready to go for that date to meet the deadline, correct?
Correct. We'll work with your financial advisor to make sure they're running updated schedules. So again, 'cause those schedules were done about 4 or 5 months ago in preparation for some of these conversations. So Taxable value, obviously, they're tracking that on a monthly basis. So again, taking a look at what's happening within the district, we'll update those schedules and that millage
Will
rate.
2 bonds be adequate if we're looking at a STEM program as well?
Well, I think that K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12, if that is an option, it'll be almost like 1A, 1B. Again, we'd have that priced out, if you will.
Yes.
And then ultimately, you have the K-8, 9, 12 at the elementary schools, which, again, you could pick one of those existing 11 facilities if you want to incorporate a K-8 STEAM. So.
Is there any more discussion?
Yes, Madam President. I'm always inclined to, if one of my colleagues would like more time to study an issue, I'm always inclined to postpone if we could, and they would do that. But I don't want to support this because I would like the process that you began by asking each board member how they felt to occur. Mm-hmm. And as you said, it's a very important decision, and right now, all of our individual thoughts on this are still our individual thoughts, and I think they need to get out. Okay. So I'd like to see that happen. And then, if before a vote, my colleagues still feel as though they'd like to have more time, I'd be inclined to support that, but not until we have the opportunity to talk about it.
Any other discussion? So there's a motion on the floor and there's a support at this, I'm sorry?
Hang on.
Just in response, that would be out of order at this time.
Oh, no, we're not. There's a motion on the floor and it's already been supported, so we wouldn't do it. He's talking about at the next meeting.
Wasn't my understanding.
Okay.
No, just as a point of clarification, what I'm saying is I'm going to vote no on the motion because I want to have this discussion.
Okay. All right. So there's a motion on the floor.
Okay, can I speak?
Yes.
Okay. The reason why I seconded this motion is, like I said earlier, I have been getting input from the members of the community, and you always know that the initial reaction that you get from members of the community usually come right at your face. And people have had a chance now to think about this, and if we go forward and we do not put a survey on the website or something like that, it'll give people a chance for the word to actually get out to them and say, you need to probably contact us if you feel strongly one way or the other about this and your reasons for doing this. Because like I said, we do represent our people in our community, and they need to feel that they are part of that democratic process of getting involved and having their opinions expressed. And that's why I'm hoping that we can use this time wisely to get their input by holding this off until the next board meeting.
So we're going to vote on the motion, but with that being said.
Madam President, if I made this motion on behalf of Mrs. Medell because I sense that's what she wanted. If she doesn't want that, I will withdraw the motion.
All right.
No, I want it. That's why
So hold on. Yeah. So there's a motion on the floor.
Yep.
And it's been supported. So we all need to vote on it.
Which should have been
voted on
first.
But at the same token, within the discussion, just so that we know, we do all realize that we had study sessions last week. And I wish we would have had this full house when we were going through the study sessions as well. So with that being said, there's a motion on the floor. There's been a support. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Ms. Hines, yes. Ms. Medell?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
No.
Mr. Buckaloo?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Let the record show 5-1.
Thank you. Motion carries. So this will be tabling this into the April 9th meeting. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you for your time, Mr.
You bet.
Willis.
Appreciate it.
So, moving on to item number 306.18, Head Start Monthly Report.
I have a question first. Do we need to make a motion to put a survey out on the website for people to?
No.
No? All right. Is that something we can give serious consideration to?
It's something we can give serious consideration to, yes.
Okay.
So, all right, 306.18, Head Start Report, please.
As required by federal law, in front of you, each of you has a copy of the monthly expense report for our Head Start program. They just finished having their literacy night last week. I know that they are planning a lot of other neat activities, math night. They're doing some, fun type things with the kids, and a lot of the programs that they are doing, they are combining with the other preschool programs that are housed in the building so that they can work cooperatively for the benefit of all of our preschoolers, not just our Head Start kids. So I think we need a
Okay, so at
motion.
this time, we'll take a motion to accept Mrs. Medill's report. Supported by Mrs. Hines. Ms. Hines, any support?
Okay. Me.
Support by Ms. Medill. Roll call vote, or any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Buckaloo?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Ms. Hines, yes. Ms. Medill?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Let the record show 6-0.
Thank you, motion carries. Item number 307.18, disclosure of employment for Ms. Melody Hines. And Ms. Medill is going to cover that for us. It's on page 21.
In the bucket.
Yes. Do you have the
I think I had
actual?
it separately also.
I do have it right here. You have it.
Okay. This is going to the County of Wayne, State of Michigan. I, Melody Yvonne Hines, having been duly cautioned and sworn, hereby state the following based upon personal knowledge. 1, I am a member of the Wayne-Westland Board of Education and the Wayne-Westland Community Schools. 2, I am also an employee of Key Bank National Association, commonly known as Key Bank, and serve as a personal banker. Number 3, Key Bank, Key Blanc, Capital Markets Inc., also known as KBCM, are each subsidiaries of Key Corporation. Number 4, I am an officer or employee of Key Corp. 5, I own stock in Key Corp, which represents less than 0.1% of the outstanding shares of that company. 6, in connection with my commencement of service on the Wayne-Westland Board of Education, I am providing notice of my association with Key Bank and plan to withdraw from all decisions and deliberations related in any manner to matters related to my employer. And it'll be signed by Melody as of today and notarized.
Okay. So before we take a motion on that, just so everyone understand, Melody works for Key Bank, and it's their policy. Normally, in the past, if we had something that came up, one of the board members would exclude themselves if they had a family member or something, but it's the policy of her job that they want it already in writing and said at a board meeting so that everyone already knows going forward, even though we don't have anything that's going on with Key Bank at this time. So at this time, I'll take a motion.
I don't,
I think it has to be voted into.
do we? All right.
Moved by Mr. Buckaloo.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Cox. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Buckaloo?
Yes.
Dr. Weaver?
Yes.
Ms. Hines, yes. Ms. Medill?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Let the record show 6-0.
Thank you. That's all part of their policy. Moving on to item number 308.18, Superintendent Report. Dr. Holt?
Thank you, Madam President. I feel extra short today. Trying to get up here. Can you guys all hear me? All right, fabulous. So first of all, I'd like to thank our students who came in and did the pledge. I mean, they were just adorable, and remind us of the power of student voice. I want to address the safety meetings that have been occurring throughout the district. First of all, thank you so much to everyone who attended our safety meetings. We had over 350 parents, students, our police chief, Chief Tajusik, our mayor, our council people who are here tonight and have from Westland who came and supported our students and our teachers and our staff and faculty through what I would consider a very trying time, but it also is a time that told us a little bit about what the Wayne-Westland community really is all about. Amidst all of this, I've mentioned in several fora that when this incident happened, or when these series of incidences happened, it was so heartwarming to see Wayne-Westland pull together. Regardless of our positions, regardless of our status, regardless of anything else, here at the central office team and at the site level teams, we pulled together because we are a community, and that is the focus of all the work we do. I have to truly thank our faculty and our staff and our administrators who literally worked around the clock to ensure safety. I have to personally thank Kevin Weber, John Albrecht, Stan Schatzka, Chief Maciak from Wayne County Police Department, because that night they each came out in the middle of the night. They had to report at 12:30 midnight to go and sweep each of the high schools, and they stayed on till about 4 in the morning, making sure with bomb sniffing dogs to ensure that every one of our staff and students were safe. And so the following day, as you know, I called I don't know what we would call it. I called school off. It wasn't a snow day. I can't say that. But we did not attend classes. But our teachers and our faculty and our food service workers and our bus drivers and folks that came had the opportunity to connect with one another and to see that this issue is bigger than us. It's bigger than just Wayne-Westland. It really involves us coming together as a community. So I have to commend those gentlemen for working throughout the night, the teams that came together the following day to create plans, the team that came together at the Westland City Council for us to make that video. All of that came out of the work of everyone coming together. So that was huge. Through the community fora, we have seen several different ways to have these conversations, and a lot of solutions are coming out. And through this bond process, we're going to see that we're making some adjustments. I have to say that some of the adjustments that we're going to do, particularly to the safety and security of the buildings, were already in the works prior to this incident. I haven't seen anything shifted in the paperwork that we were already going to submit, because it had nothing to do with the grade configuration. We were already talking about how to ensure that when people come into our buildings, they have to go directly into the office as opposed to having access to other parts of the building. That was something that is already in the works within this bond measure. So I say that as one example of some of the safety measures that we know we need to ramp up, but also things that we can do as a community to ensure we keep our children safe. That being said, the platform that we are taking, the proactive approach, is to really look at what we are doing socio-emotionally to heal the trauma and the hurt that happens that leads people to these kinds of actions. We know that this does not just come out of nowhere. We have to really think about what we can do to prevent these types of events and train our teachers, our staff, our administrators on what are some of the best approaches. Because the truth of the matter is, there is no program or thing that we can say, oh, if we do this, it's going to work. If we put this into place, if we do, it's going to work. If we go K8, K5, 6-8, whatever it is, that's going to work. It's none of that. It's all of it. It's all of it and all of us coming together. So I have to really thank and acknowledge our staff. Every one of the comments, every sticky you wrote, everything that you said, everything you wrote down is coming to all of us as we're starting to think about our practices here centrally and also looking at our revised procedures for the building. So thank you. I also have to speak to the fact that this week and next month there is an encouragement for social justice action. I would not be a well-represented alumni of UC Berkeley where social activism is kind of the norm. Yes, I've done a few protests in my day. Never been arrested.
That would have shown up.
Right? But I can't say I didn't come close, and I can't say I don't understand the need to stand up for what you believe in. And so we are encouraging our students, our staff, and our faculty to come together around what is working best for them. What I am not encouraging is, just walking out of school just to walk out. One, it makes you a risk. It is a safety hazard, and it is completely counterproductive to what we want to do and the message we want to send as a district. That being said, there are very solid ways that we can advocate and be heard, as we know, from a very positive stance. I've seen everything from the 17 reasons why, I guess to say it in a way that kind of makes sense, 17 random acts of kindness, all the way to the organization of sit-ins, all the way to letters that we're writing to the state, to the legislature. The beautiful thing is we did have our state senator did come to the meeting at John Glenn. I know that Bob Kozowski has been very active in our work. So we do have legislators that are listening, and they're trying to hear us and come up with solutions. This is not a Wayne-Westland issue. This is a national issue that we're going to deal with in Wayne-Westland in a model way. So I want to encourage our young folks to talk to a trusted adult, find someone to sponsor you. If you can't find someone, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here that can help. And so we can help from the central office level, whatever it is that we need to do to make sure that our voices are heard. And I speak to the 5 executive cabinet members. The other piece, it was Social Worker Week, which we typically celebrate with our Teacher Week, but I wanted to definitely call them out, especially since we had such a large audience here today. If you haven't had a chance to thank your social worker, we know that we've had some challenges with our social workers and making sure that we have enough of them, and we're looking into some of those challenges as we look into budget season for next year. We hear you. We hear you. I can't say it enough. Because I've gotten the text messages, the phone calls, the emails saying, hey lady, we need to do something. And we are, and we're looking at that. I have to say great work to our championship teams. We have several championship teams that I don't want to jinx it, so I'm just going to say great work, and we'll just leave it right there till we find out later. I had the opportunity to go to the Pistons game Friday night with some of our transitional students, and it was my first Detroit basketball game. Wow. We had a blast, let me tell you. I just love their spirits. There were several students who just kept me laughing literally the entire, I don't know what was funnier, the game or the kids and their jokes. We absolutely had a blast. I have to thank our teachers who were waving at people. I mean, I had never been to a game like that, so it was a first for me and my husband. So thank you to Mr. Carl DeBro and his organization for sponsoring that for our children. But in light of everything that happened, it was just great to see our kids just relaxed and smiling, because you know what? That's what we're here for. We're here to see those smiling faces. Finally, what I will say is we are going to get whatever information we need to get onto the website so that we can have the interaction that we're seeking with the different grade level configurations. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness that we're approaching this decision. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. So we're going to move on to item, I don't know if there's, I can't see with them or without them. It's just age. 309.18 citizen comments. We have a group of students here, and they all gave me a sheet, but they're all going to go up to the podium, and I think they have one spokesperson here. Kushi Patel, did I say that correct? Okay, so you all can line up right up there. And then if anyone else has any, if you haven't turned in your blue sheet, I'll take it, or just wave your hand so I can know that you're going to speak.
Good evening. My name is Kushi Patel, and I'm a student at Wayne Memorial High School. Today we have some other classmates here, and we would like to pose some questions about school safety in our schools and how it's starting to affect us. In the wake of events, there has been a major school shooting in Parkland, Florida, where 17 lives were lost. In our community, recently Wayne-Westland schools have been closed due to a threat that harmed our school, Wayne Memorial, which has brought a lot of tension. We'd like to thank the board for having some records that have been published out to the community, such as the video of Superintendent Holt taking feedback from parents and funding matters. Also the speech tonight by our superintendent. Although we do have multiple questions today asking about gun control, school safety, and mental illnesses. Thank you. Here's Siobhan Patel.
Thank you for the board for listening, and thank you, Holt, for coming to Wayne Memorial and all these other schools and for advocating for this issue. It's been a rough time for the community, but I think we've all come together and sort of pushed and create a change and be leaders, and for the state of Michigan and for the country as well. I was wondering if the board would like to sort of release a statement or any kind of form of press on advocating for a police officer in a school. So maybe create comments and release it to the public to see if you guys are for or against it. I'm curious to hear your opinion on that.
Hi, so my question is regarding student privacy. So based on suggestions that were brought up at past community meetings, like adding metal detectors, bag and locker checks, and possibly looking at students' phones, how is the board going to ensure the safety of students without invading their privacy? I'm just wondering if you can comment on that. That's what I'm asking. Thank you.
Has the board placed any restrictions on rules and regulations that have been placed in order to be in possession of a gun, such as the age limit or universal background checks? If so, how does this conflict with our district's policy and gun-free zone? How does the board inquire towards school lockdown procedures and other measures when emergencies occur?
Good evening. In Lansing, one bill under development would permit teachers and staff to carry firearms inside schools. Majority of our schools don't feel that they would be more safe this way. In fact, many have said that this would bring them even more fear. We would like to know where the school board stands on this legislation and what actions they will take regarding this piece of legislation. We'd like to thank you for hearing us out. We would like for you to take into consideration our questions and release a public statement. Lastly, I'd like to thank the students from Wayne Memorial for coming out today and contributing. Thank you.
I thank you all. I have your sheets here. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for coming out. If we could just make sure that we get every last, I'm sure they got it. We just make sure that we have all your questions so that we can answer them for you. And thank you. It takes a lot of courage to come up and be on TV and to come in front of all these people and speak your truth. And we really appreciate you coming out. Thank you so much. Thank you. That just shows you the type of kids we have in this district. We have some awesome kids in this district. And we appreciate you. Thank you. So you're all set. Just make sure, if you're going to stay, we're almost through with the meeting. So if you want to stay toward the end, and we could just make sure, if not, if you can stop right there, they'll get your questions answered for you, however you want to do it. Is there anyone else? We'll take it after. Just remind us of your name again. I know you've spoken a lot of times, and I know you're a Westland resident.
Yes, Westland resident Mike McDermott. I live at 652 Forest Street. First, I want to commend the students for coming out here from Wayne Memorial and speaking up. They brought up a point at the very end about this ridiculous notion of arming teachers and basically turning our schools into the wild, wild west. I'm sure many in this room share their sentiment, as I do, that we do not need to be putting more guns into our schools and that we need to be enforcing the gun-free zones to keep our children safe. And my question is on the K-5 or K-8 study. One thing that I didn't really hear addressed, and maybe this was addressed at some of the public forums, is what is the impact on the class sizes for teachers in the classroom with the consolidation? Are we going to be forcing, even though we have some buildings that are at 60 and 70% capacity and not at the full 85%, are we going to be forcing more students onto these teachers and ultimately making it more difficult for them to give individualized attention that I know they want to give and that students need? In 1995, the state of Tennessee commissioned a study, and I know Tennessee, not exactly the bastion for supporting public schools, but the state of Tennessee commissioned a study called the STAR study, which showcased that when you have class sizes between 13 and 17 students versus 22 to 25 students, those that were placed in the class sizes where it was between 13 and 17 performed far better academically, and the teachers were able to support those students far better academically than the students placed in the 22 to 25 range. So what impact would the reorganization or ultimately closure of several schools have on class sizes? And then my last point is this. It is 2018, and I don't mean to politic from the lectern here, but it is a year to vote. And if we want to make significant change in our schools, and we want to support our students and our teachers, and we don't want it to be yet another era of cuts and reorganizations for our schools, where we actually want to increase per pupil funding and where we actually want to stop the school closures and bring more money back from our districts and stop this ridiculous Betsy DeVos, who was on 60 Minutes last night looking clueless as ever. If we want to stop that, we need to be mobilized and we need to be ready to vote and vote with education on our minds this year in 2018. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilwoman Green, please.
Good evening, Tasha Green, Westland City Council and Westland resident. I just wanted to first start by congratulating the students. I am so proud of you guys. You did an awesome job. You asked questions that I didn't even think of coming here tonight, so you should be really proud of yourselves, and thank you. For the school board, I just had a couple questions, one being on the third grade reading report that Ms. Curry provided. It broke out the test scoring, or I guess the status by race, with the minority students, African American and Hispanics, scoring lower than white students. I was wondering, are there any intentional actions or plans by the school district to offer additional tutoring, additional training for the students, or maybe even options to allow their parents to come in if there is any issues at home that may be contributing to those type of test scores? Is there anything that the school board either already has in place or will implement to ensure that the next time we test as a district that we do a lot better? And then my other question is, one of the members of the community sent me a message in terms of the protest that may occur. Is there a protest or a march that is scheduled for Wednesday of this week? Has anybody heard anything about that in terms of the student protest? Okay, I was told that I would, I was asked that question, and I was told that I would, I told the person that I would ask about it tonight, because the person who asked the question is very much a community advocate and an activist as well, and so they wanted to know if the school district was assisting or supporting, if that were the case, and then if any support or assistance from the community was being solicited. So I just wanted to make sure that I asked that question, and I'll go back to them and let them know that the school board has not responded, so I would take that as a no. And then my final question is, with the K through 8 and the 9 through 12 option for the reconfiguration, the savings for the K through 8 option and 9 through 12, that was just under $3 million. Is that correct?
Is that the question that you're asking?
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess my question is...
I'm going to stop your time for a second. With all respect, we don't... That's why we have the blue sheet. It's just like the city council meetings. You ask your questions and someone will get back in touch with you or answer your questions at a later date. This is your time to speak to us. And so we're listening to you and we're writing down what you're saying. So don't think that, I understand this is your first time at one of our meetings.
Okay.
So that's why we have the blue sheets, and that's why we're not saying anything. We're hearing you out. We're giving you your time to talk.
Oh, okay,
thank you.
And then
someone will talk to you afterwards or within a time frame.
Gotcha.
Okay.
At the city council meetings, we actually do answer those.
Oh, okay. Well,
we do answer residents.
Okay.
So thank you for
We do it a little
clarifying that, though.
differently
The last question that I had in terms of the just under $3 million savings is, what will be the true savings or the difference in monies that will be available if we account for the construction additions that will be necessary if we do the K through 8 and the 9 through 12 option? Once we account for the construction to do those additions, are we really saving the just under $3 million for the school district, and does that make sense from a cost standpoint? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Just making sure. Okay. Moving on to item number 310.18, review and recommendations, Board of Education. Dr. Weaver?
Yes, thank you. I want to say thank you to these students that have come to
Excuse me, Bill. I know y'all excited about it, but can you give me a chance?
The superintendent had brought up the fact that...
Bill, you are out of order. We will speak about this later. You have embarrassed me in public. I am not happy about this. Do not ever do this again.
Okay, sorry, Dr. Weaver.
He's used to it.
You know it can only happen here. But
And I apologize, it won't happen again.
I want to thank the students that are here tonight. I want you to know that I have heard you loud and clear, and I'm sure this whole board has, and I know the superintendent has. Unfortunately, the lawmakers in Lansing have not heard, in that they have passed bills 354 and 356 allowing guns to be carried in schools. That is my information. Now it has to pass to the Senate for final approval. But I want you to know, as one board member, I will do everything I can to write, to get into faces, whatever I can do, because while I'm not fighting with the Second Amendment, the guns stop at the doors of our school. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Weaver. Mr. Buckaloo.
Well, I got to start this way. In defense of mankind.
Don't go there.
Mr. Bedell, representative of mankind, only interrupted because he had great news, which was that Wayne High's basketball team moved forward in the regionals tonight, and they're in the finals?
They'll be in the regional finals
on
Wednesday night.
Regional finals on Wednesday night.
Well, I guess we'll let you slide this time.
And so, all of you who are not a part of mankind need to apologize to Mr. Bedell.
Not happening.
I look out here, you got lots and lots of people, and some students as well, and it's just so good to see you here, so articulate. I saw you folks organizing your thoughts on your cell phones. I could learn from that. I was a little haphazard in some of the things I said today. If you don't go back and talk to your teachers about extra credit for the wonderful job that you did today, I will be disappointed in you. And it's good to see so many staff here too. You know, a number of you are former colleagues, still friends, neighbor or two, and it's just good to see you here. I would hope that you could find the time to come by and support what we're trying to accomplish here on a more regular basis. I want to give special thanks to Mr. Albrecht for his presentation on the advantages of the K-8 program. He was far more articulate than I was, and I do appreciate everything that you said, sir. I don't want to forget Jaden and Justice Favor for getting us off to the great start with the Pledge of Allegiance. It's always good when we bring young people in to get our meetings started. It serves as a kind of a reminder to us of just what it is we're supposed to be doing here, which is serving the young people. And hopefully the decision that we make next month on configuration will be a step in that direction. And I want to be on record right now as saying that whatever decision we make, it isn't the end-all and the be-all. We still have to support that configuration with an appropriate curriculum, with the kind of teacher in service that is necessary, with a commitment from our teaching staff, from our support staff, from our parents, to making sure that questions that were raised today about third grade reading get an appropriate answer down the road. We can do something to affect the learning outcomes of our students. We can't wave a magic wand. We can do some things, and I hope that we're in a position to do that after next month's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckaloo. Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Sean. I'd like to through the chair to Mr. Larson-Shiler, do you recall off the top of your head how many interactions there have been with members of the community concerning the choice work? How many different meetings there has been?
I believe it's 27 or 28. Yeah.
So 27 or 28 separate times the community has had an opportunity to weigh in on the issue of configuration. And I just want to share that because it's not as if the community has not had an opportunity to share that. But what's happened, and I must say I'm a little disappointed tonight because this is a very important decision that we're making. Mm-hmm. And what we've done tonight is we've postponed the decision, which, as I said, I was okay with. Anytime we have an opportunity, we have time to think about it longer, that's fine with me. But what we did, in effect, was eliminate all of the discussion that could have occurred tonight, and it still could have been postponed. But we would have had the opportunity to learn what each member of the Board of Education thinks about the issue, and that in turn might have changed our opinion or allowed us to go in a different direction with our investigation so that we would make the right decision. And I don't know that there's going to be a decision that we all are absolutely confident it was the right decision going forward for the next 20 years, and people will herald our wisdom. We're faced with several issues that we can address. One of the issues that we're faced with is our academic achievement is not where we want it to be. And if we keep doing what we've been doing and get the same result, as we all know, that's a definition of insanity. We also have financial, economic issues associated with this configuration. And one configuration over the other saves $1 million a year. So that certainly has to be at least discussed. And finally, there are discipline issues that I think would, this is just my opinion, maybe it wouldn't end up this way, but as my colleague, Ms. Hines, has said several times, she's very focused on our schools being the center of the community that they serve. And I think one configuration does that better over the other. All of these things that could have been discussed tonight, they'll be discussed, I suppose, at the next meeting, but then a vote will have to be made. We're kind of boxed into a corner. So I'm disappointed because this board does not discuss these things except for in front of the community. And what we've done is cost ourselves an opportunity to do that. So I'm disappointed in that, but willing to hear everybody's point of view. Because my colleague, Mr. Buckaloo, came out and said, but his choice was, I'm also going to say that though I came into this whole process believing that K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12 was what I wanted to see, it's what I experienced when I was a student in school. It wouldn't surprise me if a lot of the adults that had input with this decision themselves weren't in a school district with the same configuration, and maybe we're running home to what they're familiar with and what they thought worked in their day. But this is a different day, and kids learn different today than they did. Population is in schools is declining, not on the ascendancy. So all of these things should be discussed in an open forum that lasts to the wee hours of the morning, in my opinion. So I will look forward to having this conversation at the next meeting. I'd like to say to the remarkable young people that came up, congratulations. Truly, you are the answer to this problem. It starts now, but your leadership is what's going to chart the course for the future. But I want you to know that there isn't, of all of the important things that we have to decide, many of them on the plate right now, nothing is more important than your safety and security to every member of the Board of Education, the administrators and the teachers. And I think that's been proven out on recent events. So I want you to know that's what's number one with us. And in spite of the fact that the basketball team did well, I would still like to express my condolences to Mr. Mundell for what is about to befall him. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Ms. Hines?
I'd like to thank Jaden and Justin for doing the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd also like to congratulate Ms. Bro, Mr. Cox, and Dr. Townsend for your positions at Wayne-Westland School District. And I'd like to also thank the students about I am with you with gun-free school zones. Children should feel safe. I used to be a former reserve police officer, so I know how guns are scary to children. So they should be safe. We should be able to come here and not have to worry about some mad person coming in the schools, because if they pass this law and random people are allowed, it's just not safe, because we can't control regular people in the community. You know what I'm saying? So I'm totally for you all. And I definitely like to speak on your behalf as well. I do work with lots of senators, Congress, so I definitely get that out. So whatever you need, I'm your champion on that, because I believe in gun-free schools. And one more thing, too. Like tonight, with this reconfiguration, it's very, to me, emotional, because I'm a parent, and I went through, like, when they had the like a few years ago when they did the culture of the school. The thing is, it's like the way it looks. Like, okay, you have one plan this way and another plan another way, and I'm concerned about the community because schools are emotional. People get emotional about schools, so this is a very difficult decision. It's very important to look at all aspects. And one thing I'm really considering is the STEM. I really like that piece. You know, if you guys could somehow figure out to add that. And I worry about the jobs. You know, if you switch things around, it to me is a really big decision. So I'm glad to have just a little bit more time to really look at all aspects of this, you know, to really make sure we make the right decision, because this is permanent. Once that's, you know, can't go back. So I really want to make sure making that we take care of this and do the right decision. Like I said, speak with a fellow board members, and I like the different data that we have, because there are some pros and cons, like you were saying, Mr. Cox, like, you know, education is changing in the way that, you know, through the K through 8. So please bear with us, but we really want to make sure we make the best decision for our community.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Ms. Medell?
Looking out here today, I think I see everybody I know. And if not, I know everybody I see. And I'm glad to see you all in attendance today. Please come back each month. You know, we appreciate the support that you lend to the difficult decisions that we need to make our school district better. So please, this is part of the picture. We all work here as a team, or we don't work well at all. And I want to welcome Dr. Tunsil. This is your first meeting. They don't all go this way. Sometimes they're really, really short, and sometimes they include a lot of information. But welcome to our school district. I know you will jump in with both feet. We are hard workers here, but we work hard for one goal, and that's our kids. So welcome. When the presentations were done today by both presenters on third grade reading and with our person from Plant Moran Cressa, my question was, where do we go from here? I've seen this district from all different sides now, and I know sometimes when we do stuff like this, it gets put in a 3-ring binder and put on the shelf, and when you go to retire, you go, oh, I remember this, and it goes in the trash. So I was pleased to hear that we are already moving on some of the things that we heard about from Plant Moran. We are already moving on our third grade reading program, so that I know it won't just be shelved. Safety meetings went really, really well. Well done. Community was there. They were reassured that we know what we're doing, and we have a plan to make sure that our children are safe in the classrooms, in our buildings, buses, things like that. Don't forget, we have a coffee coming up with the superintendent on Wednesday at 9:30 at Career Tech, correct? Or no, it's here.
It's at 8 a.m. at Cafe Marquette, yes.
Okay, because I know there was some confusion on the website as to the location and time, so come have coffee with the superintendent. And believe it or not, written here for my notes was about the basketball teams. Somebody sold me just a little short today. But not only the boys from Wayne High, but also the girls' basketball teams and the other high school that I graduated from basketball team. I am very proud of our students who play sports here, but I'm also very proud of the ethics team from Wayne Memorial, who did an excellent job again this year. So it isn't always about sports. Sometimes it's about those academic skills that our kids shine. Every kid has a chance, an opportunity to shine in this school district. One of the things that Mr. Buckaloo and I did was went to coffee and drank a lot of caffeine this morning. Westland was mostly about potholes. And then I got a chance to go to the Inkster coffee with the legislators. And yes, there was discussion about the potholes, but we also talked about guns in schools. And a lot of the comments were, you know, about putting in metal detectors, things like this. My point, because I very seldom, I'm there just to promote our school district, and very seldom do I get on my soapbox, out of my pulpit, and said, we have to attack this problem from all sides, not just with legislation. We have no control when it comes down to voting in our state We have input into our legislators, but when it comes to voting, we don't really have the say. They do. So let's control what we can control here. We can control this problem from all sides, not just one. Yes, legislation would be great to back it up, but let's do it from all sides. I read a letter written by a former ELA teacher on Facebook that was written out nationwide, and the first thing is what are we doing ourselves for this problem? That kid that sits in the back of your classroom by himself and nobody interacts with. That kid in the cafeteria who sits at a table by himself and nobody interacts with. That kid that sits in the bus by himself and nobody interacts with. We have input to that side of the problem. We all need to start being aware of everybody around us. And we need to become involved. We need to take that step before it gets to the point where somebody's bringing a weapon to school to get even with people who weren't kind to them or nice to them or said something derogatory. We all have to take a look at the problem and take our ownership part of it. We're here to educate kids, but they're not going to learn if they're too traumatized by something that happened on the way to school or something that happened in their house before they came to school. We need to be the soft place to land for some of our kids. And you are part of that process. So get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Patel. So, as usual, by the time it gets to me, everything's been said. But I do have a suggestion, is that I do want each and every board member to be heard. And so my suggestion would be for the next meeting that's on April 9th, is that we do a study session beforehand so that we can discuss what each person has planned, what their mind is wrapped around after doing more research. It doesn't have to, we can do it at 6 or at 6:30, however, whatever the board's desire is, but I do think it's important that we have some type of study session beforehand so that everyone get off their chest what they have to say, and then so we can have the vote and be ready to go come meeting time at 7. With all that being said, thank you. It was great to see you all. Seeing you in your red shirts, being the wife of a union president, I can appreciate your red shirts, and even though, what's today, Monday? They do it on Wednesday. But I understand the solidarity, and please don't just wait till there's something that's going on. To come more often, come so we can see your face and be a reminder of our family, your family. I tell you all the time, I'm Cousin Shauna. You're the family. I need to see my cousins more often. I need you to come out. I need you to voice your opinions, and I need you to not just come when the alarm is ringing. I need you to come just to say hi. So with all that being said, thank you. Thank you to both our council people for joining us. It's rare that we get to see you because you usually are at your own meeting.
I'm a citizen and a father. My kids go to school here, so I care.
But at the same token, you both are still an intricate part of our community, and you're both council members, and so we respect that and we appreciate you coming. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out and spending your time with us. Be safe. Have a happy the rest of your week. And at this time, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cox, supported by Ms. Hines. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.